and you want to put that microphone more towards you, sir, so they can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yep, okay. Monday, I sent the board and the highway superintendent an alternative budget. I'd like to read into the public record what I wrote. Attached is an alternative budget created by a small group of concerned citizens. It represents the view of the whole, with the final product being of my own creation. I want to emphasize this is not a political document. Its purpose is to help the town with its budget and express some different perspectives on how money should be spent and how much tax burden should be placed on the electorate. If the current parliamentary budget is the ceiling, this budget could be considered the floor. It decreases the appropriations from roughly 6.4 million to 5.4 million. Estimated revenue stays the same at 4,128,000. The appropriated fund balance decreases from a roughly 1.3 to 0.9 million. And finally, the tax to be raised decreases from 970,000 to 386,000. Thus, based on the 2017 assessed valuation, townwide of 1,250,443,712, the townwide tax rate per thousand would be 0.309444. There would be no outside village tax needed. Notice special districts were not addressed because they appear to be self-funding. Here are the processes and the methodology by which the current budget was amended. The town's worksheets were obtained through the Freedom of Information laws. Since there are no numbers for the fiscal years 2017, we compared requested line items to what was spent in 2016. The amended budget was incorporated into our discussions on each item, those from 2017, and we attempted to cut where it would seem reasonable. Remember, this is a very conservative budget, and there will be obvious differences of opinion in what is essential and what is not. Big cuts that might be expected
You have 1 minute, sir.
come from DA and DB. I want to highlight that there's nothing fundamentally wrong with the Highway Department's current proposed budget. It was offered in good faith and represents a thoughtful and logical approach. I particularly like the regularization of equipment. All organizations should follow that model, ensuring good equipment over time. The problem now is with an uncertain financial situation, the equipment buys may have to be delayed until the town is completely understanding of its budget. Similarly, overtime as a budget to unexpected labor costs should not burn the taxpayer at this time. Thus, equipment replenishment overtime expenses have been cut. Equipment purchases to zero, overtime cut by 116,536. Personnel was cut to zero in DA. The rest of 181,000 was cut equally from DB and DB. Both
Time, Mr. Fry.
Might have more time.
No,
Can I give him my time?
no, no. If he would like to give you what he was reading, he may, but I mean, we're gonna try to make this as best for everyone. I mean, then, so I can
Okay.
keep moving it on.
Thus,
Okay,
here is copies of what I read, or attempted to read entirety, and here is a sign up for emails in which I will send to the public if anyone who wants it. There's a full budget that we put
and
together.
Mr. Fry, if you wanna show someone where you left off,
Do
if
you want me
someone
to
wants
keep
to
reading?
read it, what you want read is fine with me.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Right
next.
there.
Okay.
Just that budget sale, or budget.
Yeah, mine.
I'm sorry, but we have to keep
Fair
it
enough,
strict.
fair enough. Let me bring what I have up here too.
Okay,
I'll let you know, ma'am, when you have 1 minute.
the big cuts may be expected to come from DA and DB. I want to highlight that there's nothing fundamentally.
I read that. Go to the
You read
next
that?
paragraph.
Okay, budgeted sales taxes are $3,100,000 because of the reduced appropriations DA, DB, and B. I filled up each revenue pot following the example of the current preliminary 2018 budget. That's why DB remains fully funded and now B is fully funded. The leftover $160,226 was used in a increasing revenue and a decreasing balance to be raised by the real estate tax levy to $386,942. Capital projects have been cut to zero. Again, at this time, and although needed for capital improvements in the future, it might not be the best time to place such a burden on the taxpayer. I believe the major cuts have been addressed. Smaller cuts were made where possible. I understand none of these suggested cuts may make any sense to some, yet to others they might be helpful in cutting the 2018 appropriations. I trust you can follow the attached marked up budget. I also hope my math is correct. If not, I'll apologize now. Finally, I'm sending this to Supervisor Luzer, all board members, the Highway Department Superintendent Forbes. Please do not disseminate to others until after the election. I'm providing it before the election only to allow enough time for you to review it before the public hearing on Thursday, November 19th. Any questions or comments from the board? Okay, so that's finishing him, but I just had a couple of quick comments. I noticed in the worksheets that under judicial, they had 14,508, but you budgeted 25,500. And my other comment is,
One minute, ma'am.
Okay, I'm a little concerned about the amount of overtime in the highway department. I understand we need it for the snow, but this last weekend, the fellows were out, and first off, let me say, our highway department is excellent. Our snow plows do a better job than Saratoga. You can tell when you're leaving the town of Milton and going into Saratoga. So no complaint on the service, but they are working on the weekends at time and a half, and it's leaf time. We'll need them during the snow time. Perhaps that's a place that you could consider cutting.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. I also want to make sure that everyone realizes the statement that I read at the beginning of this meeting was in response to Mrs. Kerr's cuts. The problem, so if you folks would like, we can go over those cuts, I mean, and then you can get a copy of them if you want from Ms. Kerr, but I would like to go over those, and then that way, and then I can then reopen the floor back up into the public, or we don't have to go over them. You guys tell me, raise your hand if you want me to go over those cuts. Okay, we'll go over the cuts. So first, what we did, what was proposed was the overtime budget, which is $100,000. Ms. Kerr, sorry if I just, Barb, I say Ms. Kerr, I mean, Jim, I don't know, whatever. $100,000 in cuts. Which would leave us $116,000 in the overtime budget. Now, the problem with this is, and I'd like to go over these one by one. The problem with this is that, okay, $116,000, that might sound like a lot, and maybe it is. The problem is we do not know. With wintertime coming, we could get dumped a lot of snow in late November, all the way through December, January, February. I mean, my first year living in Milton, we got 2.5 feet in Christmas, and then got another 2.5 feet a week later. We had 5 feet of snow in about 8-day period. The problem is, it doesn't always snow during 6 a.m. till 3 p.m. in the middle of the day. Most of the time, it snows at nighttime. So, I mean, and every time it snows at nighttime, I think Dave has been pretty frugal. I'm gonna speak for Dave, even if he doesn't want me to. I think he's been pretty frugal because he just doesn't ask these guys to come in as soon as he sees a snowflake fly from the sky. I mean, he basically waits until I would say there's at least a couple inches on the ground, brings these guys in, and then they do their business. So, really, to try to go into the overtime budget, to me, I think is erroneous. I think that would be a big mistake because we do not know what is ahead of us. And if we do cut that by $100,000 and we're left with $116,000, and they use that all, if we have a bad winter, then they're going to have to come to us and we're going to have to rebudget it, and there's going to have to do budget transfers, which I know Barb does not like as the budget transfers because it looks like we haven't budgeted appropriately. So, and not only that, but I mean, as we'll see through here, she also wants to cut the contingency budget. So, I mean, that's where Dave would have to get his money from if we take the overtime. So next is the capital projects. We have $250,000 in there, and it was proposed that to wipe out the whole thing. Now, as everyone knows, and I would like to have everybody's attention, please. So is that, I don't wanna be misquoted or have to be misspoke here and have someone say I didn't say something. Or did I give due diligence to this? So $250,000 out of the capital projects was proposed to wipe it all out. Now, I think Benny, and who is our chairman on our buildings department and our facilities committee, Benny, I think Mr. Blaisdell, who serves on that, Mr. Ostrander, myself. Again, I'm not gonna put words in people's mouths, but I do believe that the capital projects, we have to leave money in there. I mean, as we all know, this building is not in good shape. And all I've heard for 5 years from people is, okay, well, I'm just putting a Band-Aid on it. Well, if we take the 250,000 out of it, we're not gonna put anything, not even a Band-Aid on it, and we have roofs leaking as we speak, windows, I mean, the building's a mess. So, so that's that. Judicial, $15,000. That was proposed late. I have no problem with that being cut. Budget officer, $3,500. Like I stated earlier, I'm no longer the supervisor in another month. If we would like to vote on that, that's no problem with me. If they want that to be cut out of there.
If I could kind of interject as
Sure.
you're going along here.
Absolutely.
Looking at that, just my point of view, the supervisors pay, I don't know, what was that, 46, 48?
It's 46.
46?
Yes.
I think for a town our size with the responsibilities we have, that's kind of low. To add another $3,500 as the budget officer, I don't have a problem leaving that $3,500 in. That's a responsibility the supervisor takes on. My point of view is I'm okay with leaving that in there.
Okay. And if we want to do this one by one too, I thank you. I mean, if you want to have interjection here, that is completely fine. I mean, the budget officer, like I said, the judicial, I have no problem cutting it out. I mean, Benny, how do you feel about the capital projects? I mean, since you are the chairman of the facilities committee, I mean, it was.
Well, in that letter that I sent you guys, I thought cutting it to 125 was reasonable. That gives us something to put in, lets people know we're trying to move forward, and it takes 125 out of it.
Okay.
And as I said in the beginning, I'm perfectly willing to negotiate these numbers.
And just so everyone knows too, the 125, if we do move it down to that, that has nothing to do with cutting our budget though. Just so you realize that, because that's money that's already, there's already $250,000 that have already been earmarked for capital projects. So we can move it, we can put 125 in there, but there's still another 125 that's available. So whether we have 125 or 250 on the budget line, it could only be used for that amount of money. It's not like 125 that now goes back into the A account, just so everybody's clear on that. So to me, I think we should just leave it at 250. That way, it makes more sense just in case if something does come up. Because whether we put 250 or 125, like I said, it doesn't make any difference on our bottom line figure. So like I said, the judicial is 15 grand. If you guys want to do that, that's fine. Scott, Frank, Barb, I know Barb, you put it out there. So I mean, if you guys want, that's fine if we want to do that. Benny, do you want to?
I'd like to comment on Dave's overtime for the 116. Everybody needs to realize too, if he doesn't spend that money, that comes back to the town at the end of the year.
Well, that's a good point too, Scott. I'm glad you brought that up because the simple fact is, we want to build our reserves. Okay, the only way you can build our reserves is by when you over budget for things. Sometimes then whatever's turned back in, that gets dumped into your reserve account. We can reuse that money. So that is a very good point.
The $3,500 for the budget officer, that does not have to go to the supervisor, correct?
Anybody?
I could give it to Darlene if I appointed Darlene.
Exactly.
Correct? No. Okay.
So as far as so right now, the judicial 15 grand, is that, we decide we can cut that out of there?
What is that for?
When I went to that, cut that number, since we don't have the 2017 figures, that's what was in there. We don't know what was spent. In 2016, only 5,400 was spent, under contractual.
Yeah, and see, that's another thing I want to make sure. Just because really what you should do when you're doing budgets is try to do 3 years worth of budgets and you take an average of what you spent. Try to do it by what you say, okay, you say in 2016 you didn't spend as much, or you spent a lot, because something might have happened or might not have happened that have happened in years past. So what you should really try to do is take 3 years worth, take an average, and go from there. So what is happening with a lot of these cuts, I notice, is that we looked at 2016, realized that we didn't spend as much, so we cut it right down to the dollar. Now again, what happens if we have to spend more money than necessary in one of those departments, then you're gonna have to, we're gonna have to move money around. Oh, not me, you guys will.
It makes it very difficult when we don't have last year's numbers. We don't know what is left in here.
Again though, the year is not closed. Usually the year to close out figures don't come in until probably about March or so.
But we don't have year-to-date. We don't know where we stand at this point. We don't have those 2017 numbers on anything.
Yeah, again though, the year-to-date, I can tell you though, the year-to-date numbers on this particular year, and I want to stress this to you guys. This is not a year for you to look at year-to-date right now. Well, because what happened was in January in 2017, I asked our department heads to put a spending freeze on everything that they did because we wanted to get our arms wrapped around what we were dealing with figures. I just didn't want the department heads going out and spending everything that they had in their budgets that was just passed.
Budgeted items.
On budgeted items that was just passed, and then if they did that and realized we didn't actually have that money, then we'd be in deeper trouble. So if you're looking at actually year-to-date numbers right now, they're going to be much lower than what they normally would be. So what I suggested to you folks is, at this time next year is when you really want the year-to-date numbers in 2018, because you're going to be back moving in the right direction. This year there was a spending freeze on what we really needed to do. You're not going to have those correct numbers. So I know what you're trying to base it off of 2016 or what we've already spent. This is not the year to really try to do that because we really limited
Can we
what
move on and just
purchased.
do this so that people can talk?
I'm trying to explain your cuts. I mean, if you don't want me to, then if you wanted me just to,
I'd be happy to explain my cuts, but go ahead.
well, I need to explain them because we need to have common sense to them.
Excuse me?
So the next one is engineering. We had $50,000 engineering fees. Okay? $50,000 in engineering fees that we put in there for the fact, or actually we moved it to $70,000 because last year we had $20,000, and when Ms. Kerr and I sat on the committee last year, I was told that the 20,000 is a ridiculous number. We should have a higher number in engineering fees because obviously the town spends more than $20,000 in engineering fees. So we did. We moved it to 70,000, which is still probably a little. We're still lowballing it a little bit.
You skipped records management.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's $1,000. We can
Because
take
we
that
have
out.
it in the
That's
budget,
fine.
but there's no records management,
Okay,
so,
that's fine. We can take the $1,000 out.
thank you.
So engineering, we moved. The proposed cut was $50,000, which would move it back down to 20,000. I mean, which is it? Do you want it at 20,000, and then you're going to have to move budget numbers around for next year? Or, Benny wants to spend 26,000 in January to approve.
So let's make it 50,000 for next year.
So you want,
Well, that's my.
so what you're saying is, take 20, you want to cut it 20 grand instead of 50?
Yep.
Okay.
That's
Scott,
not gonna be
Frank?
your only engineering fee for the year, though.
Correct.
You gotta realize it.
So if you take 26 right off the top, now you're left with $24,000 and
For the rest of the year.
From February through from December. And you still have Boyd Haven to get through, all that stuff.
We don't have enough money.
So, so you tell, again,
I forgot about Boyd Haven, you're right, leave it, let's, my vote is to leave that 50 in there then.
okay, Benny, or Scott, Frank, Barb,
I say leave it in there.
okay, I agree, there, that's what we'll do. Special items was 50,000. That was, refresh my memory, Darlene, what was that again, 50 special items?
Stole my
Huh?
Sorry. Is that it?
Oh, thank you, the contingency budget,
Mr. Supervisor,
yes.
is this a budget workshop? Because I can go down and get our files for
No,
a
it's,
budget.
that's what I was gonna just ask, it's really not. a
Because it's
budget
not
workshop.
posted as a
Right.
budget workshop.
No, I
This
know.
is supposed to be a public hearing for
Yeah,
us to listen to our residents'
Right.
concerns.
Okay, the reason why the reason why I'm going over this is because I let the public raise their hands and they said they wanted to hear this. But if you don't now, we can go back to you guys.
That's a no-no, isn't it?
It's a public hearing, sir, I think you should listen to what they have to say.
Okay, then we'll raise it, we'll go right back to the public again. Who's up next? Ma'am? Again, I'll let you know when you have 1 minute, ma'am.
Shouldn't be too long. Liz Cormos, 89 Hyde. It's my understanding of municipal finance that your reserves, your fund balance, is there to cover unexpected expenditures. It's my thought that you should look at maybe 3 or 5 years of, how much snow removal you had to do, and, peg it somewhere there, and then I think they should come back if we have a higher snowfall, and then you should have sufficient reserves to cover those, because we also had a winter where we had almost no snow. And, yes, it does go back, but for budgeting purposes, I think budget should be expected, reserves should be for the unexpected. And I know I've heard you're taking 700,000 out of your fund balance. What is the projected fund balance currently, and is it
In
at
the A fund, ma'am, it's 1.3 million.
1.3? So it after this, after taking out the 700?
No, after you take out the 700, it'll be down to 600,000.
So it'll be approximately 10% of
Almost
the,
700,000, but.
it'll be approximately 10% of the total budget, right? Which is sort of the bare minimum as recommended by the comptroller's office. So that's a little concerning, and that's the
Right.
result of the 3-year mistake.
Correct.
At least you still have 600,000. But that's what, building that reserve back up again, I think should be a major thing. But also, budgeting for normal expected, and then if you have to come back to the town and say, hey, we had to spend more, so be it, but I don't think you should budget for those levels. Thank you.
Okay, thank you,
Your
ma'am.
name, please?
Liz
Your name,
Cormos.
please. Liz Cormos, Kormos.
Mr. Rossi?
Frank Rossi, One Constitution Court. I'm a little bit perplexed by the last speaker in this because I've attended meetings in which she's spoken of Balsas Spa about how low the reserve account is in Balsas Spa and how it's a problem to her. I have the complete opposite view in general of budgeting, which is you hope for the best and hope that you're overshooting, but if you know through experience that your numbers have been historically too low in certain categories, you have to go up. You have to go up from those numbers. And so a reliance on a reserve account is exactly what you would complain about in Balsas Spa. Why would it apply here in the opposite direction? I think there's a common sense approach to balancing here. 2016, as you stated, is an anomaly year because it's A, not done, and B, there was a freeze at a certain point. But you do have 2013, 2014, 2015 to look back at. You also have some knowledge of what 2016 should look like, but that can just verify 2013, 14, and 15 numbers at the end of the day, or vice versa. So I'm not sure, I hear a lot of gasps and upset and concern in the audience tonight, but at the end of the day, 2016 isn't the number set to rely on. It's just not gonna work. You can use it to a little bit of evidential manner, but that's not the way it works when you're trying to put together a budget or any kind of accounting scenario. So we have to trust the board to a certain degree here to look at 2013, 14, and 15 to see the pros and cons of the numbers that they used and adjust accordingly, because they know if it was too high or too low in those years. And if they can't spot some reason why 2016 would be different, then they should be using those as the authority, not 2016. That's my thought.
Thank you. Ma'am?
Sharon Licata, 4 Ichabod Lane.
I'll let you know when you have 1 minute, ma'am.
Okay, I'm quick. I just have a couple of quick questions. The 2016 numbers, I came down today and requested them, and they couldn't get put together fast enough for me, I guess. I'm an accountant by trade, I've just retired, but I've been an accountant for 40-some years, and I don't think it's a difficult thing to do a financial statement for a year that's already closed. So I would have liked to see 2016 numbers and haven't seen them. Whether it's an anomaly year or not, I really don't know anything about that, but I do have 15, and I could at least look at a little bit of those numbers together and see where we're headed. I also want to know, what is the mandate for financial statements for this municipality? When do you have to have financial records for us? Isn't there a monthly requirement that forces you to have some numbers together or something like that? Because if 2017 isn't ready.
Even though I'm not supposed, this isn't me for answering questions, but Darlene does give us a report every month. And
Okay, who's Darlene? I'm sorry.
She is our state, or she's our, I was gonna say state comptroller, she's our town comptroller, and if you would like to, you can easily get those foiled, ma'am.
Do I have to foil those?
Yeah, I haven't gotten mine either.
Well, actually, what's that?
I haven't seen one.
No, I was
Well,
told
we
there
used to
weren't
get
any
them, though, actually.
2017 numbers.
They don't, maybe we haven't since the audit was going on with the FBR, so.
Well, do you know, Darlene, I'm sorry, do you know the mandate for when you have to have financials?
Yeah, you have to file with the state, I believe it's the end of April. And we haven't done it yet because there was no one here for a brief time.
Yeah.
And then when I came, we did stuff and we found that we wanted to go back. So 2016 was never finished. We're waiting for the report from our auditors currently, and that's what they're working on. And they'll file that with the state.
Are you talking about the AUD, the end of the year report? You're telling me that wasn't filed for 2016? And we're just finding that out?
That's what we've been waiting on.
No, that's what we're.
That's what,
Pardon me?
that's what EFPR has been working on.
That's what they're working on.
Who's the FDR?
EFPR, ma'am, that's our auditing firm that we hired to get our requests.
It's an outside
I
firm?
never got a copy of it, David, but I was told that was filed.
With Julie.
I don't know who told you it was filed.
And also, when we foil these reports, are we able to see what's in reserves too? Can we get all of that?
Sure,
Okay,
sure. Yeah, I didn't have time to pull all that together today.
I'm sorry?
I said I didn't have time to get all your stuff today.
Oh, okay.
That's all. I was just working on.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Stalters?
Oh, budget, we've heard it, we've heard it, we've heard it, we've heard it.
Everyone, can you please give Mr. Stalters your attention, please?
We've heard highway's always been worked on. I've known highway for many years. They do a good job, we pay them well, we give them good coverage, we pay them the work. That's why you're here, boys. So let's not hear any more about that. Now, as far as our budget goes, we have never, since I've been here, had somebody scrutinize the budget like it's been scrutinized this year. And it hurts. And it hurts, and I can see the people who it hurts. We don't know where our budget is. Our comptroller don't know where the budget is. The board members don't know where the budget is. And yet you fight a budget that will cut us down. Is it gonna kill us to make cuts in our budget for 1 year? We cannot come back next year and straighten it all out. It is not straightened out. How can we go with a budget that we don't know what's what? Nobody's got the answers. Nobody's got the numbers. We have the answers. There's people got together and they found the answers. The man who found our answers is not a dummy. He's a budget man. He knows where the cuts can go. You can argue against them, and you can argue against Barbara's cuts. These are not the,
Who's that man? Who's got all the budget answers?
Mr. Jim Fry.
Oh, he's an accountant?
He's a retired budget man. He knows, and he is very
I
knowledgeable.
thought he was a military guy.
The
1 minute.
government does not hire idiots.
1 minute, Mr.
Okay,
Stalters.
thank you. So we could argue this on, we could argue this on, we could argue this on, and all it's gonna do is cause more distrust amongst the town people. And as it goes now, I've been here a long time, And I've never had the untrust that I've had this year with anybody. So I would think a few cuts, get it over with, and if somebody took the time to work this out, why criticize them? Thank you.
Okay, actually, I'm gonna just respond to a couple of things there. Number one, scrutinize the budget. That is what our job is to scrutinize the budget. That's what you folks pay us to do, isn't it? I mean, you want us to scrutinize the budget, you just don't want us to throw out stuff to you. And number two, we have controlled spending by over $600,000, so I don't know how many more cuts that you would like for us to make. I mean, we've lowered our spending by $600,000 in this budget. Anyone else? Mr. Forbes.
David Forbes, I'm the highway superintendent. I want to thank all the board members that have contacted me. Bonnie, I've spoken to Bonnie, I've spoken to everybody here with the exception of Barbara. I want to thank everybody, I want to thank everybody in the audience as well for their input and everything that's gone on. This isn't something that took place over this past year or this past 2 years. This has been something that's been going on since 2000, and it's something that we spent hundreds and hundreds of hours to do a PowerPoint presentation, just because these aren't the easiest things to understand if you're not working with them every day. We've had a controller change that left. We were 2 months or better without a comptroller, which is ridiculous in a town our size. I think right now with the board and with the people in the audience, the board is, in my opinion, and I'm the first one to probably argue with everybody here, I do believe that they're taking the necessary steps. We cut the highway department $500,000 for 3 years to try to overcome what happened in previous administrations, and it's only gotten worse because it wasn't handled appropriately through our own staff with the numbers that were given to the board. It's not very easy to understand. Along with the reserve accounts, we don't have a reserve account in the highway department. The reserve accounts aren't for that item. We have to plan for the fiscal year on what we have to spend. I, as highway superintendent, am personally liable if I go over an account on any item. I have to come to the town board and they can say, they won't give me the money. That means everything I've worked for my whole life, I lose. I'm not willing to take that chance with anything. The one thing I can tell everybody in this room, and I do have our year-end numbers, I carry them, or our year-to-date numbers, I have them on my phone all the time, so I know I'm not getting close to overdrawing an account. This year, I'm turning more money than I thought I would because of weather conditions. If the weather conditions were as such where we could have done the road construction we wanted, it would be much less.